Hey, this episode is brought to you in part by HLB Lighting Design, Signature Doors and Windows, and Modern Denver Magazine. Now, on to the show.
If a client asks you very early, like, how do you charge, you know that they're making their decision based on your fee. And they're typically the client to avoid. You can't do great work when you're pressured for fee or time. It just won't happen.
Hi. Hello.
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 Hello and welcome to Architecting.
It's so funny when you do reactions to me, but just with your eyes when we're in front of the microphone. Like,
Honestly,
just say what you're thinking.
I didn't know you were recording.
No.
Hi. Good evening. Welcome to Architecting. I'm here with the host, Adam Wagner. Hey, Adam, who's on the podcast today?
Now, today, again, you're just going to make fun of me because I'm going to say we have a really good guest on, but this is somebody that I've really been looking forward to talking to for a long time, and reached out to him pretty early on in the podcast and never heard back and sort of felt bummed about it. And then it turned out I had the wrong email. So it wasn't his fault at all. I mean, it was my fault. So yeah, we have Scott Lindenau from Studio B Architects.
Nice.
Yeah, I think to me, Studio B really represents this like really pure, clean, simple architecture and a real reduction down to its simplest sort of essence. And it always seemed like to me like Scott had these beliefs and came to Colorado and just pushed really hard for it and didn't compromise on the type of architecture that he wanted to create. And you'll hear in the interview it seems like they're doing very well and really able to have the type of clients and type of projects that they're after. And and you'll hear I feel encouraged by that, by that idea of pushing towards what you believe in, and that you'll come out on the other side and it'll work out.
Nice. I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really interesting. He's a deep guy, thinks deeply, and travel is actually really important to his life, and discovering and being in different locations. And you can see that even on like our Instagram page where after the interview I said, okay, hey, I'm going to post some images of your work. I can easily pull it off of your website, but let me know if there's something else. And he wrote back and said, actually, anybody can go Google my work and you can see that, but I just want to post pictures from my travel, and that's the thing that's meaningful to him and that he wants to share. And so go check out those images. And I think it really does say something about who he is and also then how it translates into what he and the firm of talented people are creating. So
Nice.
yeah, enjoy. Oh, and also if you're listening to this, this is the beginning of November in 2023. Make sure to come out to the AIA Colorado Design Conference next week. It's the big party where the whole state is able to get together, and I think we'll have some good speakers. And they're setting up a little podcast booth for me, and we're going to be doing some live interviews of the keynote speakers and whoever else shows up. So come over and say hi and hang out.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, see you there. But first, here's a few messages from our sponsors. Today's episode is sponsored by HLB Lighting Design, and we have one of their principals, Greg Mackel, here. Greg, tell us a little bit more about HLB and about yourself.
All right. Thanks, Adam. I am a principal with HLB Lighting Design, as Adam mentioned, and we are the largest independent lighting design firm in the United States, and we have 7 offices, but I really focus on my passion, which is high-end residential lighting design. And Adam, we really wanted to sponsor an episode after seeing that we were so lucky to have been part of the teams of so many people that were on your podcast. And we really like to create environments where your eyes are not drawn to our work, but our work really enhances the interiors, the architecture, the artwork of a space, and really truly creates a comfortable environment that homeowners really enjoy. It's comfortable to be in the space, and we do take projects really from conceptual design all the way through the aiming of the last light at the end of the project.
Yeah, lighting is so important for a project, and bad lighting is super visible, and good lighting can just really enhance the design of the space. I know from working with you guys, just your attention to detail and your diligence and just that real scientific approach that helps us bring these spaces to life and light them well is invaluable. How can people get a hold of you?
Thanks, Adam. Best way to reach me is either through our website, hlblighting.com, or you can email me directly at gmackle@hlblighting.com.
Great. Yeah. Check them out. Thanks, Greg.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
And now back to the show. Man, it's good to finally meet you. I feel like you're like a white whale here for me. I've been wanting to connect with you for a while, and now here it is. Thanks for joining. Where are you at today?
Today's been an excellent day. We've had two quite special interviews, and we had one yesterday. So we're in that wonderful position to be highly selective about who and what we commit to, which isn't always the case, but it's becoming more and more the case for us, having a 30-year history.
I was going to say, I just kind of assumed that's how you guys live all the time. You just get the cream of the cream and just get to turn down whatever you want. But
it has been pretty much the case. And, I feel so fortunate to be living a creative life and to be paid to have an idea. So I don't think a lot of people can say that. And I've held true to the convictions I established while at Rhode Island School of Design, and I've maintained the rigor to that conviction, and I think it's paid off now over time. And clients come to us for what we do, and they often don't even interview anyone else. So we feel very, very lucky.
Good. I pretty much just set up this whole podcast just to glean from all you guys that have these answers. So that's what I'm excited to figure out is how you got there. Let's start from the beginning. Let's start with this question of who are you? How would you answer that?
I've always been highly curious, ambitious. I've never really settled for less. And I think that I've always believed in myself. So I've usually achieved what I've set my mind to do. Grew up in in the Midwest in Madison, Wisconsin, and grew up in the swim team and, self-sufficient from an early age. And I was always just very motivated. And it took me a while to find my direction in the profession, because my undergrad degree from UW-Madison was in zoology. I was fairly certain I was going to become a doctor. Applied to med schools, took the MCATs, did all that, and I wanted to reconsider what I was doing. So then I took 2 years off, taught skiing in Jackson Hole, and decided, well, creativity is something that was important. And then I originally applied to RISD in furniture design. And I first landed there in that program and realized I didn't want to become a craftsman. So I wanted to be more of an ideas person. I transferred to architecture, and it's all worked out.
But so starting back with that idea of the sort of ambition and working hard, and did you come from a family who had been in Wisconsin for a long time and kind of background of farmers and that kind of thing? Or like what was your parents and family life like?
No, quite the opposite. My father was a utility executive, large power company, and my mom, raised the three of us. And that was more traditional, home life back then. But I think that, from an early age, my father taught us, the ethics of, hard work pays off, and it's setting goals for yourself and realizing those. We all started working as young kids. I've always been an entrepreneur as well. I had my own lawn mowing, company. I sold hot chocolate at UW football games. I cut people's grass and shoveled snow. My brother and I in high school started a painting company. We started painting all these people's houses. We had 9 employees. So from an early age, I learned that if I worked and saved, I could get things that I would want to get. So I think that was good. And then as I was going through my undergrad career, I really never felt passionate about the sciences and math, even though I was good at those things, but it wasn't really what inspired me. And when I finally landed in Rhode Island, I was surrounded by just creative people, and all sorts of the fine arts, and very inspired by all that.
Yeah. When did you go there?
I was there from 83 to 86.
Okay, yeah.
Being originally from the Midwest, I used to go to the West skiing all the time, but it was my first foray into really spending time back east. So while I was at RISD, I went up to Montreal, Quebec City, Nova Scotia, New York, Boston, Philly, and I really got a taste of the East Coast. And I'm thrilled that I was able to be educated back there, but I knew I would never want to live there. It wasn't the climate or the lifestyle for me. And I always, wanted to go back to the mountains.
Yeah, because let me see. I've interviewed a few people who went to RISD. I think Stephen Dinia was there. But I had this real, not nostalgia, but this idealized version of RISD, and what was that, kind of the late 70s maybe? Is that when the Talking Heads were coming out of there, and just this super creative scene? I mean, is that what drew you to RISD? How'd you choose that, and did you have that kind of image there?
Well, when I decided that architecture and design could be, direction for me along with furniture, I started looking at programs around the country that, had that. And I actually made a pilgrimage back east and went to several schools, Princeton, UVA, RISD. I went and looked at Rice University, Harvard, Princeton. And, I got a feel for RISD that, this hotbed, plus it was next to Brown University. So I took a lot of courses there too. There's a reciprocity between the two schools. But, I went from a school of 45,000 at Wisconsin to RISD at that time was 1,750 students. So a small, intimate school. Some of the departments, like textiles, had 10 people in them.
Wow.
I used to wander through the various studios to seeing what people were making. And I just love that energy, the passion of creating. And again, feel really lucky that I was able to go. It's the oldest design school in the country, founded in 1877.
Really?
Very, very, difficult to get in. And I got in as an older student, so to speak. I went there when I was 27 because I had a previous degree, and I traveled quite a bit. Traveling, we'll talk about that later probably, continues to inspire and inform me in how we do things. But I think they saw me as a focused student at 27. Most of the kids applying there were 19 to 20. And I really loved it there.
So what was kind of going on at the school at that time? Who was kind of there, and the sort of ideas that were floating around that really stuck with you?
Well, as you know, any college or any architecture program is really led by the department chair. And when I was at RISD, it was a special time because Rodolfo Machado and Jorge Silvetti were paper architects at that time, were theoreticians and kind of poetic architects. They hadn't built anything. And Rodolfo was the head of RISD, and Jorge, his partner, was the head of the GSD at Harvard. So they attracted a really highly talented crew of critics, mentors, tormentors in some cases. And it was really a truly exciting time to be there. And RISD also, I think it still is. I think almost 50% of the students there are from abroad. A very diverse, student population, which was somewhat new for me in an exciting way. So there are people from all over the world in my program. And I think we started with 83 kids in the architecture program, and we graduated 55. But I was able to dabble in many of the other departments when I was there. But I was inspired by a lot of the other students in other departments. The competition at RISD is fierce because it's a private school. The education is quite different. After your first year there, you meet with the department head, your advisor, and quite often the grad student, mentor, and they either say we want you to continue in the program, or we really strongly advise you to switch majors. You're not going to make it. And that's something, when I've been a visiting lecturer or critic in other programs, I talked about, in some of the public schools where they don't have that policy. I mean, and I think RISD feels that they want their graduates to have no problem getting work. They want to come out of school with very strong portfolios. And it's typically true. I see a lot of portfolios that come over my desk, and the better schools usually have the better students and better portfolios, and often the better faculty.
Yeah. It can be a tough thing sometimes of like CU, for instance, right? There's no gateway to get in. Anybody can get in. And sometimes you get surprised by a student who, might not have had the background or the experience to get in, but then excel once they get into the environment. But then a lot of students are just kind of barely make it through, right? But they get through. It's an interesting, dichotomy.
Well, talent can come from anywhere. And to me, ambition, motivation, goal setting, and drive, it's either within you or it's not. And, it's all about initiative that you take. And I think optimism, I'm internal optimism, believing in yourself and the convictions you make in life. I've been keeping journals since I was a child. I have crates of them, both kind of professional and life goals, as well as just more of a journaling. And I find that when I write down, goals and thoughts and, things that are important to me, they usually come true. The more I put them in front of my, pen to paper and, brain to hand, they seem to resonate in the forefront of how I make decisions about things along the way.
And that's just something that you did your parents kind of say, hey, here's a blank journal, like do it? Or that was just something always inside of you of kind of documenting, then projecting?
Well, I think it started, when I was in my late teens, when I started traveling the globe. I just started keeping records of the adventures and, what I was thinking and experiencing at the time, and just recording, my experiences and in some degree, the history has been a huge part of my life. Like photography is as well. Chasing light and really capturing light and shadow is part of it, as long as architecture is too, and how light plays into our world and our mindset and in our attitude. But yeah, journaling is I do it almost daily. Get up in the morning, make an espresso, and that's what I do before I get to work, usually around 8.
It is powerful. Like that was a kind of New Year's resolution thing that I started this year, and it's actually still continued. It's not every day, but that look back and say, okay, what did I do, and what am I projecting forward? It's a good practice. You're inspiring me to get better here, but talking about architecture, I mean, I was going to say, doing your undergrad and growing up in Madison, and then, going to grad school for furniture making originally, was architecture a big sort of influence in your life growing up, or like something you realized, or was it sort of part of that travel maybe, that stimulated it?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that really kind of got me intrigued by architecture. A lot of people I talked to who are architects knew when they were young they wanted to be an architect. They sketched houses. They play with building blocks. I didn't really do much of that. I really kind of found architecture late when I was at RISD. And when I was living in Jackson Hole, actually, I was dating a woman whose father was an architect, and I'd go to a studio and I'd kind of see the models and I kind of got, intrigued by that. And then when I was at RISD, when I realized I didn't want to become a craftsman building a rocking chair once a year, I'd go up to the architecture, level and see, the models. And, at that time it was all, sketching and which I still do. But I just saw that, creating actually structures and program and seemed to be more of what I was, more interested in. And then when I made the transfer into that department, it kind of all fell into place. But, I was there from the age of 27 to 30. So I graduated at the age of 30. It felt good.
So let's talk about those travels. So, it seems like a central part of your life. Did it start pretty early, you're saying? And kind of where'd you go and what impacted you?
Well, as I mentioned, my father, his parents were from Denmark, and my mothers were originally from Sweden. So when we were children, we used to travel every year, and we'd do 3-week road trips either across the United States. One year we went to Maine to Savannah. Another year we went from San Diego to Vancouver. Another year we drove across the deep South. So we did some really interesting, trips as a family. And then we also went to, Scandinavia and Northern Europe a few times as well for, extended trips. And I think that kind of got me interested in travel. My first big trip, solo was in 1977. I went at the age of 21 down to Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, many months. In hindsight, at that age, I was pretty young to be doing that then. But, I would say every year since then, I've been taking, major trips, and often in the last 15 years, 2 of these trips a year for at least 3 weeks at a time. And the more remote, the better for me. My wife and I enjoy experiencing indigenous cultures, rituals that most people will never see. I don't mind not showering for 2-3 weeks, all that kind of thing. But it really teaches you about what's important, the simple things in life, that nature is truly a refuge and sanctuary for all of us. We all get so caught up in our busy lives where we're connected at all times that this is an opportunity to really escape all of that and really consider what's important in life. And as there's chapters in life, from pre-children to having families and children, and we have 2 boys. And once they left the house, we realized that we had time again. So at this stage of career, which is exceptional right now, we're thrilled with the work we have and the clients we're attracting. But I don't want to just work my life away. There's other things I do enjoy doing and other passions I want to continue to explore. Painting, drawing, sketching, photography, many other things.
Yeah. I loved going to grad school. It's like that moment to kind of pause and to put a lot of thoughts and things into kind of like constructed form and into architecture. Did you have a sort of thesis or kind of final project that you were able to kind of take some of those ideas that were starting to form up and the travels and put them in something at the end of RISD?
The final thesis at RISD is interesting because the first semester of your last year, you actually create your thesis, and you have to do the research and produce a book about what is the thesis. And then the second semester was actually executing that thesis into a design. My thesis was based on voyeurism and hedonism, how well-being and the lifestyle of staying fit and things, where we're kind of coming to the forefront of people's lives. And I harken back to the Roman area with tepidariums and the hot plunges, the cold plunges, and all this stuff. And it was about transparency. And it was in downtown Providence, which was, when I was there, was in a state of transformation from this gritty blue colored town to what's now kind of a Renaissance city, between Boston and New York. But it was well received. It was really about life and social, applications. And back then we do everything by hand. We didn't have computers, and there's a kind of a thing at RISD where all the young students helped the thesis students build models, help hang the presentation. And I think there was 300 people at my review because we had critics from Harvard and MIT come down and who were friends of Machado Savetti and critique the work. But it was a high-powered affair, and fortunately, mine was well received. Other friends of mine, were crushed. That I think it's something we all kind of experienced at some point in school, that either we changed schemes at the last minute or we weren't prepared. But I only pulled one all-nighter when I was at school, and that was the last one. And I said I won't do that again.
That's impressive. Have you? It's a little not off topic, but have you? I just, that feeling of being in those final reviews, and when you have that big jury around you, and it's just like playing sports, right? It's like playing in the championship or something. And like, have you been able to recreate that in architecture? I mean, hope you have. I guess I don't know if I have, but
Well, one of the things, architecture does is it allows you to present ideas. And, if they're well conceived, well thought through, and you've got the drawings and, the documentation to back up your thinking, even if they don't like the design, at least it's been thought through.
right.
That to me is really good. And the thing that was great about RISD, it's still a very theoretical school. They really want you to learn how to approach idea, concept, and what's the rigor behind supporting it, and how are ideas made. They'll let you figure it out, wall sections and details and specifications as you enter your practice period of life. So it's all about, concept. But, to recreate the thesis review, I mean, we do have some very high-powered clients at this stage of the game. And we're starting to work in many other states as well, which is exciting for us to work for different landscapes and contexts. But, essentially, often making your first presentation to a very high profile client is very much like that. So I think, architecture school prepares you for those moments if you've done the work. So I think that was good preparation for life.
Yeah. So you get through that. You're 30. You're shot out into the world with ideas of voyeurism and hedonism in your brain. What's next? Where do you land?
That took me to Aspen, of course.
Oh yeah, and there you go.
No, but my route to Aspen was a little bit, circuitous. It wasn't really planned. I mean, I remember when I graduated, I had several offers in the cities back east. But while I was at RISD, I did work for Machado Savetti a summer. I worked for another firm, Bruce McNally on Martha's Vineyard. I worked there a summer and tried living in the ocean, see what that was about. I spent time in Newport, Rhode Island, when America's Cup was there. So I got a taste of kind of that the sea life and living on the Eastern Seaboard. And, it wasn't really my thing. And I kept thinking about, the landscapes of the West and, the great climate. So I got in my VW van and kind of traveled down the South and cut across through, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. And I stopped along the way with some RISD alumni that I looked up, in various places that were on that route, a couple in New Mexico. And then I came up to Aspen, and it was kind of by chance. And I was having lunch here at the Red Onion, which is still here. And I was talking, and another architect who's still here asked me, what I was doing. And he said, "Do you have your portfolio?" And I said, "Yes." So I went to my car, got it out and showed it to him. And he said, "When can you start?"
Who was it?
That was Charles Cuniff.
Oh, really? And
So
you just ran into him at the restaurant?
I just ran into him.
Really?
So I worked there for 3 months, and realized that, where his work was going and where I was thinking I wanted to go weren't the same. So and then I started applying at various national firms, Gary's office, Morphosis, and Antoine Predock. And at that time, this was 1986, I got job offers from all of them. However, Gary and Morphosis at that time, your first 6 months, you were really essentially an unpaid intern. And I had student loans.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I can't move to Los Angeles and pay rent and pay student loans back. I have to get paid.
It was ridiculous when you have to argue to get paid to do work. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I went down to Albuquerque. Predock actually called me up and he said, "I want you to come down here." So he flew me down. I went to his studio and he saw my portfolio and he said, "Well, I'd like you to come down here and work for me." He said, "Pay us $7.50 an hour, but you can't tell other people because they're only making $5.50." So, I mean, anyway, so I worked down there for about a year and a half, really got some great experience, met some really wonderful, colleagues and friends who I'm still friends with several of them. But Albuquerque wasn't my cup of tea. It really didn't resonate with me. And I headed back up to Aspen after that and worked for a couple of firms as more of a design consultant. And then I started Studio B. I got my license in 91 and then started the firm right after that.
Let's talk about Predoc. I'm so interested in him. He's just like seems like a really cool dude, right? I mean, just has this whole kind of aura around him. And at that time, I mean, he was pretty early in kind of computational design and like computer, like getting projects in the computer, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, the first year I worked for him, we worked on. He had his office. He had 6 of us that were all his design team, and they had a crew of about 25 that were his draftsmen. And he never really took on partners, but he had one principal was working closely with he and I. That was more in the design piece. The other principal was his like technical director who could put anything together from a log cabin to a skyrise. And he was incredible at working drawings and construction documents. So, but it was fascinating because, at that time, he was probably, I think he's close to 85 now. But back then, I think he was in his early 50s. And, he was doing some really interesting projects, very inspired by, Native American, sort of rituals, the landscapes of the Southwest, which are powerful. The light there is very, it's emotional light for me. I still love the landscapes of Utah and Arizona and New Mexico. And I learned how a really good office was put together. The thing about Predoc is pretty much his way or no way. And there are firms, that we all know that operate that way. I tend to gravitate more towards firms that are more collaborative and more, horizontal. And that's kind of the way I've structured Studio B, where, we work, horizontally. The best ideas can come from the interns. We've let go of egos to really produce design excellence. That's really what we're all about, just great work. And you can't do great work without great clients. And, really trying to select those very carefully. People with the same mindset and the patience to go through this the right way is what we look for. And I've always said I'd rather lose staff and let them go than take on projects we don't believe in to keep people busy, because a bad client will always be a bad client.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of bad clients, so what was the first client? What was the I love hearing the stories of this sort of like first month of starting a firm. So how did that come about?
Well, I was, again, incredibly fortunate. So I had worked for, 2, 3, 4 firms here in town, after Predoc's office. Many of them wanted me to come on board. I just wasn't ready to commit because I didn't believe in the work they were doing or the mission they had or their process or philosophy. And I was dating a woman at the time from Sweden. And one of her best friends, who's a ski mechanic, happened to marry or was going to marry a very wealthy girl who really none of us knew was wealthy. So we went to their wedding, and afterwards they came back from their honeymoon. I got a call from them saying, we'd like to talk to you about designing your house. And so my first commission was in a place called Wildcat, outside of Snowmass, on 35 acres and a beautiful piece of property. So, I was able to get this incredible commission right away and allowed me to set up the studio. And my first employee was one of my better friends from RISD, whose strength was more technical. My strength is more conceptual and ideas and people and working with clients and, arriving at ideas. His name was Chuck Roberts, and his strength was the technical side of architecture. So he was my first employee. He came out here to Aspen, and he worked with me for 2.5 years, putting things together with me as we started, the Beehive.
Yeah. And I think kind of the only thing that is more interesting than your first project is how you get your second project. I feel like you can kind of fall into a first project sometimes, but like, what was the momentum or maybe lack of momentum like for after that?
During this first project, these clients were connectors and influencers. That was one thing. So they knew a lot of people. So I got to know a lot of people through them. And then I also befriended one of the original partners of Design Workshop, Don Ensign, who's now passed. But he and I became colleagues and friends, along with several of their founding partners. And then they started, seeing, my work, and they started recommending us. So we got, a couple next projects from them. So that's how the work started. And for the first, 5 or 8 years, we were, hovering between 4 and 8 people. And that felt like a good size for me. So that we were, charting the course ahead very carefully about what jobs. There were times when I was close to leaving Aspen, because back then, modernism, so to speak, hadn't really, wasn't what people were looking for. They were looking more for thematic architecture, ranches, log timber, farmhouses, that sort of thing. And I kind of drew the line and said, we just don't do that work. It didn't really inspire me. I wasn't excited about it. So we got a couple, really good projects. My second project was with a woman who was going through a transition in her life, and she let me really kind of take her on a journey to the next level of rigor and thought. And she became a new woman through it, and we're still very close friends. And she was a huge proponent of us. And between her and her project, I was able to get, several new clients over the years.
Yeah. Man, I think that's so interesting. Like you being able to look back now and saying, first 5 to 8 years, there's some ups and downs. And I started a new firm with a partner that we're almost at 2 years, and it's like every month or every week is like, it feels long, right? And you have these ups and downs, or project go on pause, and you're like, oh man, are we ever going to get another project? And it's like, we've only been around 2 years, this roller coaster that you have in the kind of stages of the career. And I was really curious about that with you guys, especially where it seems like Colorado, I don't know, 20 years ago, something like that, or even 10 years ago, it was hard to get modern work done. And it seemed like, you guys and Arc 11 and like a few of these other ones, trying to really stick to the guns and do critical work that they believe in. I see it as then kind of paving a path for some of the rest of us. Did it really feel like that? And what sort of stopped you from going away from Aspen and going away from Colorado?
Again, attracting the right clientele is critical and essential. And the ability to ask specific questions about learning about these clients before you jump in with both feet is really imperative. And these were things I've learned along the way. But I think really staying passionate and clients can see passion from somebody, and you also have to be a great listener. So, staying true to those convictions I established in Providence have, served me very well. And also, I think my personality and my ability to communicate and make people feel comfortable is also a big plus, because, I've seen talented architects who are, either extremely introverted or overly egotistical, and they rub people the wrong way quite a bit. And I think that there's a real art to attracting great clients, but now our portfolio, speaks for itself. And as I said early in the conversation, clients come to us for what we do. By the time they get to us, they've reviewed our work. They know us really well. They've asked all the right questions. And it's usually a matter of, talking about the process and how long all this will take, depending on where that project is. And then lastly, they usually ask, a fee question. Usually that's one of the last things they ask, it means the clients are hiring us for the right reasons. If a client asks you very early, like, how do you charge, that they're making their decision based on your fee. And they're typically the client to avoid. You can't do great work when you're pressured for fee or time, it just won't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the challenge, right? But then, I've seen, I think somewhere on your website or in your profile or something, you talk about, obviously, just making good architecture isn't totally tied to a price tag, right? I mean, you can make good architecture and good design with a smaller budget. Do you believe that? And how do you get that to work?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's Frank Lloyd Wright, as you know. I mean, for the longest time, he was working for patron clients for much of his career. And then the Usonian house started when he was designing houses for the bricklayer, the postman, the car salesman. And, he was able to really do great work on budget. And I think that we've been able to do the same thing, not quite at that scale, of course, but we like to elevate, the human condition with beautiful work, and you don't have to have a large budget to do that. But the talent of a good architect is being able to design accordingly to a budget. We all struggle with it, including us. It's easy to design anything when you don't have a budget, which we don't really have often. But to design something at a low budget, you have to know what materials to look, what kind of details to pursue, what things to show clients. It's easy for a client to fall in love with something they can't afford. So being responsible and really being able to understand how to design to a budget, it takes experience. It doesn't happen overnight. We see our younger staff come out of school all energized like I was, but they don't have a clue about, designing and is that even realistic in his client's budget? So it just takes, some trial and error and some really, good mentoring and educating by, senior staff to really be able to teach them about how to design appropriately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when you design that first project, and I guess maybe to now, let's say to now, are you able to articulate, what your design philosophy is and what you believe architecture is?
Yes, I can. So
just little questions here. Yep.
Yeah. So to me, architectures, I talk about residential work in particular as a vessel of memory, ritual, that your work is really about, how you, reflect your daily life and the collection of light. What is the experience in the plan that makes you want to go to a certain space? How does that space feel? We try to pursue that throughout our work and really integrating, light in particular into our plans, making them very efficient. But it takes a while to have a lot of projects built to really understand exactly how 3 dimensions work, how it affects your, space. And, you just know as an architect or as anyone, when you walk into a very special space, you feel differently. And we try to really think about how we achieve that in our work. Because, the older I get and the older we practice, restraint is kind of a word I describe our work with, that we're minimalists at heart and modernist. Less, as me said, less is more. But, a lot of our projects are one material. And, we often talk about texture with the exterior and how that translates to the interior, and how we take furniture and things you touch and feel, millwork and cabinetry, into the interiors to support the original concept and idea. We're often inspired by contemporary artists, a geological feature on the site, a historical aspect to a property, or a specific some of our clients have very unusual programs, and quite often, or art collections, and those all inspire diagrams. And we still sketch and draw a lot early on before we draw anything. Computers kind of come in later. We make collages, we make storybooks about our the early work, and how those diagrams are influenced either with topography, geology of materials we find on the property are often inspirations in translating to a material palette down the road.
Yeah. What's one project that stands out in your mind as being really successful in ticking those boxes?
That's built or that we may be working on?
No, anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have a project right now that is quite, remarkable. It's exciting for us because something that we at Studio B have been thinking about for quite some time is, I think our reputation and, our work in Colorado and the Rocky Mountain West, I think, we have a great solid reputation. We've always wanted to work more nationally, and which is starting to happen now for us the last couple of years. And, to work in different contexts, different environments, different landforms, different environs is very exciting for us, and how we respond to these different, criteria. So we got a call about a year and a half ago from a young couple from, north of Chicago, who own a beautiful piece of property on a large farm that's kind of rolling hills. It was glaciated, many thousands of years ago. And they did a national search for architects. Some very, very well-known architects were all considered. And we were selected, I think, for the work. I think the fact that I had Midwestern roots, they liked our philosophy and approach to design. The fact that we were a smaller firm of 20, that were more boutique, that we'd give a lot of attention. But I think our personalities just really, meshed with these young couple. So, they called me after 6 months, that they'd done this national search, speaking to over 40 firms, and they wanted to work with us. So this is an opportunity for us to really get on the national scene. These clients are very influential, and they've got a wonderful site, a wonderful budget, and a program that's really exciting. And they use words like they want a significant work of architecture. They want the rigor to the entire project, the furniture, the landscape. On this one, we're working with Conan Partners out of Minneapolis. Shane Conan and his team are a nationally working landscape firm, do beautiful work throughout the country. And they're working now in other countries as well, Saudi Arabia, England. So it's an opportunity to work with some wonderful collaborators on a project. We're just in schematic design right now, and we presented 6 different strategies that ask different questions about themselves, the property, the site, budget, lifestyle. And it was exciting because of the 6, they loved 4 of them, but 2 of them they really liked, and they're the most bold and innovative strategies we arrived at. So this project will probably, I would think is going to translate to other work, around the country, which is exciting for us. And we're pursuing, a project that's unlike anything we've ever done. And the material palette's inspired by the shagbark hickory trees on this property that are like huge canopied umbrellas in the summer, turning color in the fall, and act as sentinels during the winter in the snow. So the material palette looks like it could be wonderful, kind of this, worked board form concrete as an option. Another one could be huge stone chisel panels out of quarries. So it's going to be kind of monolithic in this undulating landscape. So it's a cool project. We're very excited about this. I'll be highly involved in this job.
And this is a residence, or it's
a residence, yeah.
But it's a sort of like different programmatic kind of take on it, you're saying, or?
It is. We're letting the topography kind of be the architecture in a way. So it almost becomes a landform rather than, almost a building. And how we're blurring that and blending that into the topography with Conan Partners is going to be very, very cool. So, and then we're also going to be doing all the interiors on it as well, the furniture, the furnishings, probably helping them select art. So it's an opportunity to kind of create an entire vision.
Wow. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing that. What about a built work? What's a project that you think really checked a lot of boxes for you? Really chased that light well.
Yeah, we've got there's a couple that really come to mind. We did a house many years ago that I think really got the attention, and that was my personal house in the trailer park here in Aspen. That kind of put me on more of the architectural map.
Hmm.
It's 25 years old now. It was called Trailer House, and at the time, I moved to Aspen. I was living in a mobile home park in Aspen, and normally there's somebody who owns the land. You pay rent to that person. Well, this person, sold the land to everyone who owned one of these. And, I was the first one to redevelop. We tore the trailer out and I built a home there.
Hmm.
And it's still a very cool project. But it initiated a studio at the GSD. It made national news. People were driving up from Denver and Boulder to see this house. And it was actually kind of annoying for a while that people kept wanting tours. But it just showed that design mattered to people, and good design, and it was in a trailer park, in a lot that was 100 by 30 feet, and that kind of got the studio really jump started. That was, I think, my third project, and that really energized me and then the firm, and we started getting more calls after that.
What was the concept? What's the concept of that house?
Well, the concept was, the lot was so tiny and the setbacks were such that the whole house was 18 feet long and it was 64 feet long. That it was essentially kind of taking the notion of a trailer and creating, a house, that wouldn't stick out like a sore thumb. I didn't want to over design it, overspend it, knowing it was in a trailer park. But it was, taking this kind of shoebox and shoehorning it into the site and trying to still have privacy from neighbors, which are immediate to you in every direction. So I think from a design perspective, it was, and we had, of course, shed snow too. And, it was a very simple form. It's not on my website anymore, but that project was in trying to make tight space with 4 bedrooms and 2,000 square feet, was a challenge, and getting a staircase in there. And we were also limited with the height. It couldn't be above 14 feet. So it means you really couldn't have 2 floors above grade. So it means you had to go down below and still, get natural light down there and make it livable.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you said about it's easy to design with no budget, but sometimes it's easier to design with a bunch of constraints and, a small site where it forces you into those solutions that aren't apparent always.
And the second project, that it's interesting. It's also my personal house here in Aspen. My wife and I, she directs the interiors division of our company, but we found a little house that was built in '68 here in town that had been, not abandoned, but it just had been left in a state of disrepair. And we happened to find it. It was all overgrown, and I knocked at the door. A woman, answered. She said, "I rent." And I said, "Well, who owns it?" She says, "Well, 3 brothers, but none of them live in Colorado." And I called the older brother and said, "I'd be interested in buying this house. I see it has good bones." And, and he said, "Well, we don't want to work with realtors. Come back, do the work, and come back and make an offer," which I did. And we were able to get it 5 years ago. If that was today, there's no way I could afford to buy it. It's way out of my price range now. But so we just finished a total transformation of that house, 2,400 square feet, small house, but it's perfect for us. But it's one where my wife and I truly collaborated on this project, the whole thing, and it's pretty magical.
Yeah, let's talk about that. It looked like your wife came to the firm a little bit later after the creation of it.
Yeah, she came into the fold. Well, what was happening is, most architects, anyone who's listened to this, will agree that quite often the interior design team comes in after the fact, or the clients can't afford interior designer and they move in their grandma's furniture, and the clarity of the project is very diluted, and it can be very disruptive. And So that was happening to some of our early work, and I think 15 years ago, I said we need to add the interiors piece to the team, and I would say four out of five projects now the clients hire us with a separate agreement to do the full interior design package too. So that made a big difference. But on this particular project, the house being close to 50, 60 years old, things started breaking a couple winters ago, and it was all original. So we decided let's go for it, and we moved out, gutted it out, and redid it, and finished it in 8 months.
So did you know her before she came into the firm, or yeah?
We were dating, and she was working at another firm, and I told her, I said, Susan, we need to jump ship and come over here and lead this, which she did, and now she's got a crew of 4 that work closely with her and realizing the interior work.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that. My wife's an architect, and right out of school we had a firm together, and we were in like 350 square feet that we lived in and worked in, and doing a project together, and we just got married, and it was really like marriage and work by fire, and learned a lot about each other, and but it's tough to work with your spouse and then to be kind of all consumed by design at all times. And I think by now we appreciate it. You don't have to try to pretend like I care about chemical engineering or something or whatever my spouse might do, but it's all kind of consuming. How has that worked out, running a firm together and just living life together?
It's a great question. It's remarkable that we get along very well, both here at the workplace and at home. But it's true. I mean, design. If you're passionate about what you do, it's all consuming. I mean, your a creative brain never shuts off, and we do find ourselves, talking and discussing work and clients a lot when we're not at the office, at home, but we intentionally try to use at least one day in the weekend to go out into nature and find that refuge again, and forget about, take our cell phones, and we get away. But it's hard. It is all consuming, and as creatives, we never stop thinking creatively. So whether you're a painter, a dancer, a poet, it's not a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah. Has that translated to your children? Are they going into a creative field?
Well, we have 2 boys. They're both grown now. One's 29. He graduated in finance in San Francisco. The other one's 24. He's a graphic designer, lives in Boulder. But I've taken them. They've been to lots of our projects. They've seen a lot of the presentations. They look at the models and the renderings. And I did ask them, when they were in their late teens, any interest in architecture, and they both said, we don't want to work that hard. I kind of laughed. I said, well, you're probably making a good decision, but because we do tend to work a lot, as you know.
I don't want to work as hard, and I want to make more money. Okay, well, yeah, finance. There you go. Yeah. Let's see. I am really curious about this idea of now you're talking about you have built up this awesome portfolio, and you're talking about kind of going more national now. I was just talking with a group of architects last night about this of sort of it's kind of strange where there's a lot of good designers, a lot of good work going on, but there isn't necessarily somebody who kind of rises above the state on a national level, like kind of how Predoc did down there, or Rick Joy or something like that. What do you think? Do you agree with that? And what do you think it takes to transcend that and, go to the next level?
Well, the interesting thing about, New Mexico, for example, with Predoc, New Mexico, I think the whole population is 2 million for the whole state. I think there aren't many firms down there. It's also one of the poorest states. The only outlier there is Santa Fe and a little bit Taos. Predoc was able to, set up shop there many years ago, in a place between really Chicago and LA, where there were few architects making a difference and very few living down there who were actually doing any of the work. They were probably coming from, the Midwest or California to do work in the Southwest. But again, I mean, kind of like my philosophy of staying true to your convictions about great design, over time, that reputation, we've never advertised, by the way. And we're getting calls, weekly now in both studios, which is exciting. But I think staying true to your convictions and your passion, eventually just translates. And, in the work, Predoc's work is when I was down there, he was at his height, and of course he's much older now, but his work, it was unusual and resonated with certain kind of people. And I think some architects, if you continue to reinvent yourself and adapt to change, you'll continue to do great work. And we all have our heroes, who we look to. And I'm always interested in there are firms like Tadao Ando, Alvar Siza, Peter Zumthor, that their work is very consistent in a certain vocabulary. Others are reinventing themselves in every project. Herzog de Moran, OMA, that every project's unique to context, to site, to budget. And, you can go about either of those strategies with your own work. Do we want to develop a palette of material where people are hiring us for that kind of work, continue that trend? Like, Studio MK27 is a firm we like a lot out of Brazil that do beautiful work, but all their project is kind of an iteration of the previous one, but they're all beautiful versus each project being unique to itself. We have those discussions at Studio B too about, what is our path? But, we distill the ideas down to their essence and try to, create the architecture that does that. But I think, we're I agree. I've been in Colorado now a long time, and, quite often the best commissions in Colorado seem to be coming from out-of-state firms. And we'd like to be that firm that, changes all that. I think we're doing a very high level of work these days that's very distilled. And I think that, we're going to resonate with certain clients. And I think working nationally is going to allow us to, work in other kinds of projects, as time goes on. The first 10 years in practice, we were doing primarily residential work. The second 10 years, we explored doing more civic, public, municipal projects. But we found that when we started working with taxpayer dollars, schools and things like that, all the great design got diluted and the rigor was lost. And people were on these boards making decisions about design and, and taking things out of our projects. And at the end of the day, we kind of looked at them and said, it's not our best work. So we're now focused on bespoke, custom, residences. And we're also, very interested in museums, places of worship, cultural buildings where design matters to those people. And they usually have a more sophisticated board of directors and people where they really appreciate and value design.
Yeah. It's always interesting to think about a firm like Machado Savetti or Diller Scofidio or something, where they're in academia for so long and they stick to their guns so hard, and then all of a sudden they explode with these kind of civic projects and things, at a larger scale. And it seems like such a delicate balance, like you're saying, to say, okay, I know what I believe in. I'm just going to put my head down and continue to do good work. And things will come from it, but then trying to jump that scale up and getting to that point where somebody wants you so badly for you, that they trust you to do something that you haven't done, right? Or that's not in your portfolio before. It seems like a difficult balance.
Well, we were able to, when we secured some of those commissions, we did a winery out in California in Paso Robles 12 years ago. That's actually a nice project on a budget, that we're quite proud of. That project was secured through a client here that I knew, where this client was looking for someone, who could bring a high level design to the table, who was willing to kind of do it for a little bit less because, they hadn't done it before, and we kind of fit that bill. And then we end up doing the house for that client afterwards. But, we did a church here in Aspen that we like quite a bit, and we were able to get that commission because there was someone we knew on the vestry board that really understood architecture in the process of getting, a great building done. And he was able to convince, his board members to take a chance on us. And it was a very solid building that we did. I think it was in 2010.
Is it the Episcopal church?
Yeah.
So was it a renovation of a existing?
It was, it was a strange Quonset hut built in the 60s that had some additions to it. And then we put a significant addition onto it in a lower level, and we renovated the whole church, and I think we increased it by about 35%. And the fascinating thing was, after we finished the project, they more than doubled their congregation. And we've had a lot of people come up to us and say, the church just feels incredible. And, and that, those kind of things with communal projects, are wonderful, like giving back to place and community. So, some of the social fabric projects, really are good as an architect to give back. And then we've done a series of schools, and, we were able to get those commissions by, joint venturing and partnering up with another firm that, were more school experts, and we were more the design team, and they were more the experts in school programming and, all the technical aspects of designing schools. And those played out really well too. And we enjoyed those projects.
It seems like the Aspen Middle School turned out really well. It seemed like a good project.
Yeah, that was a good one, and I think we also really like the Aspen Community School down in Colorado, where stunning piece of property, and we really enjoyed that one.
Yeah. It seemed like just some nice kind of simple moves with wood, especially, and getting that texture and the light across the facade and then inside as well, and some of those ceilings.
Yeah, we're going to taking plays off of, agricultural structures, and, how old corn cribs and, hay lofts were constructed.
Yeah. So kind of bringing up community. You've been in Aspen for a long time now. How have you seen it change, and how do you see the design community there, and kind of your community that you interact with?
Well, the Aspen's, evolved. There's been many chapters since I've been here. When I first moved to town, it was more, Wild West, a lot more grittiness, a lot more, ski bums sleeping in vans and cars, and just a lot more characters. And, it's always had some wealthy people here who liked it as an outpost, that they could be anonymous here. And of course, I still think the Aspen itself and this valley is the most beautiful one in Colorado, along with having all the culture a big city has. I mean, to me, there's not another mountain town in Colorado or Utah that have what we have. And that's why it's so desirable for people to want to be here. So that's one thing. But so when I first moved here, it was quite a different place. It was, even though it was still expensive then, it was a lot more affordable back then. But I think when 9/11 happened, a lot of people in New York and in cities in particular were kind of wanting to find a place where they could be, it'd be safer. So there was somewhat of an exodus here from some big cities. So there was a slight blip on that radar then, and change. Things started to go up in price a little bit. Aspen's always had a glamour aspect to it, with stores and restaurants and the high culture scene. So it started attracting, a lot more people from abroad, Brazilians, Mexicans, wealthy Europeans to come here. And, as you always probably hear, people come here for Christmas and to ski, but once they experience the summers here in the fall, it's truly amazing. So And then, the next big one that's really been a game changer for all of us here has been COVID. The amount of people who've been able to work remotely, all this high-tech Silicon Valley people, a lot of our clients now are in their mid-30s, and they're flocking here for the lifestyle, for the school system, which is exceptional, the restaurant scene, the easy access to hiking, skiing, kayaking, golf, whatever it is. I mean, and it's driven up prices significantly where, really most people who work here can't afford to live here. But this isn't just Aspen. It's all the resort towns are experiencing the same thing. And I'm good friends with a lot of other architects and contractors in other valleys and other towns, and we're all having the same problem where the cost here is so outrageous these days. It's making it really difficult to attract staff who can actually move here. They all have to commute, so it has those challenges. But the character of the town's changed because we've lost a lot of the old characters, the ski bum types. It's a very different culture right now of people who are here. But from a professional perspective, I mean, the clients we're able to get up here are pretty special and remarkable people.
Yeah. Before we jump off here, I almost forgot, but Studio B, where did it come from? What was the story of the name?
Good question. I've been asked that many times. When I was doing my thesis at RISD, I'll never forget. We all worked very hard in architecture school, and I remember looking out of the architecture building in Providence. Is an old textile shipbuilding that was built in the late 1700s, and the ships just come in, unload their wares in this building. And I was in the top floor doing my thesis project, and I remember saying to myself, one day I'm going to be paid for this, to do this. And I knew even then that I would have my own firm. And I said, it's got to be a name that was anonymous, that wasn't just about me. It was about the people at the studio and the firm. And I just remember, Studio B's and Studio A's maybe too obvious. So I randomly selected Studio B. So there's not really a good reason for it, but I just wanted it to be about the people here.
Yeah, no, that's strong, especially at that time, right? I mean, essentially every firm was such and such architects, and everybody's name, and that seemed more unique at that time. But cool, man. Yeah, I moved here, I think about 8 years ago, and yours was kind of one of the first firms I applied to, and you got back nicely to me, and kind of went back and forth, and unfortunately I didn't get a job there, but I get to ride my bike by the Brick City house about every day, and just love that house that you guys did, that courtyard, and like I had said before, just I kind of see you as helping to pave the way kind of for innovative, meaningful architecture in Colorado that the rest of us kind of younger architects get to coast better on. So thanks for the work, and thanks for talking today.
All right, well, our pleasure. By the way, the Brick City House, I mean, those are one of those very, very special, great clients. They don't come around often, so really embrace it when you get them. And they're continuing to be friends of ours. In fact, they're considering maybe doing another project with us. So we'd be thrilled if that were to happen.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, thanks.
Well, Adam, thank you. And sorry we could do it in person, but I think this worked just as well.
You can visit architecting.com, that's architect-ing.com, to see images from this week's guest.
And please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.
Have a great week and keep connecting.
Hi, I'm Eli. This show is made by my mom and dad and these people.
Heidi Mendoza, Emily Childs,
Fernando Queiroz,
Zach Huff,
Trevor Notsko,
Aaron Best,
Kyle Bruner,
Rob Cleary. All right, let's get a coffee.
See ya.
We're so lucky right now. This week alone, we've had 4 interviews. It's nuts.
That's awesome.
And 3 of these projects are awesome. I mean, it's now I have to figure out how are we going to do them? Because I don't want to overcommit and underdeliver, and we're booked right now, so we're going to probably have to make some of them wait if they're willing to wait. But it's the real challenge up here anyway is employees come up here and they love it because our Boulder studio, people in the Boulder studio, they like the outdoors, but they're also urbanites too. But the people up here are they up here because the work, but also because the lifestyle. They're most of them are active skiers, golfers, kayakers, mountain bikers. They go to Utah a lot, like I do, and we're so close to everything. But the reality is, it's so expensive that, especially younger people, like 25 to 30, go, well, how am I going to live here down the road? And if I ever want to get married and have a family, I can never do it. So it's a real dilemma for all the mountain towns that, people come and they stay 1 to 3 years and they have to leave. And it's tough because, you train people, you put a lot of time into mentorship and education, and that they can go down to our Boulder studio. And Boulder's not cheap either,
Yeah, really.
It's not like here, but it's becoming problematic to really find people. But we're doing, we have 3 employees who completely work remotely. One in New York City, one in Santa Cruz, California, one in LA. But all 3 of them worked in our office with us for 2-3 years before life happened for them. They had to move, but it's actually working well for us. But the whole flexible workspace and working, not working in the office is a challenge for everyone. And is that the way of the future? Is that the way we all work? And this is a collaborative profession. It's hard to exchange ideas over a Zoom screen, and there's various software that you can do sketch and things, but it's not the same as sitting around a conference table sketching and what about this, what about that. So that's something that I found that we're all adapting to right now too.
Yeah, especially when you get so used to it and the culture of your firm is built around that. My business partner is in Connecticut, so we started during the pandemic, so we've only been remote, and so it does make for interesting things, but we've had to kind of adapt to that. And I think about that a lot. Do we hit everything with travel? Do you want to tell any good stories or?
Well, the travel thing is, it's really a critical part of who I am, and we don't go to your typical places. Our last big trip was Chad, and most people don't even know what Chad is or where it is. But Africa, I've been to Africa over 20 times, and wow. Africa has 54 countries, with 7 of them being larger than the state of Alaska. So it kind of puts things in a scale perspective. And there, the Africa, the rituals, the landscapes, the light, drumming, dance. It's a whole nother world over there. And, you can travel to Europe, you can travel to Mexico, and, it's kind of civilized, but, you go to, weird Indonesia in Africa, it's a whole different way of travel and seeing. And, I think about it all the time. And, I love being in these remote landscapes, right? I have to think about being on Zoom calls, making decisions, and, dealing with people and clients. And I'm truly getting up and trying to maximize my experiences when I'm in these locations to really take it all in and write about it, my journals. So I'm fascinated by how other people live around the world. It's just, and we realize how lucky we are. The average African makes $1 a day, $300 a year. For them to even think about trying to get on a plane and come to the States, it would take them 15 years to save the money for a plane ticket.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. It really, we're just very, very lucky people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. But I've been to Gabon and to Liberia. And,
When were you there and why were you there?
I went to Liberia. I got a commission to do like a master plan of a big kind of community thing, and more of like a kind of sketch through stuff. And then Gabon, in grad school, we had our studio was based there, and so we went down there for a week to Libreville. But it's just like the urban centers, right? Especially on I know Western Africa better, but like it just such interesting typologies and forms that have been developed that are so interesting, of like taking references from different places, but then it's so totally of that place, and just like never really publicized much,
Well, the other thing that, that's interesting. You've been to those two countries because, almost everyone goes to South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, maybe Egypt, and Morocco. Those are the 5 most popular. And they're all beautiful, but seeing these other indigenous, like when we were in Chad, we were there for almost 5 weeks, and you're drifting over the Sahara Desert, which is bigger than the United States. And, you see these nomadic, Tuaregs and Toolbook people just in the middle of nowhere, just walking across the desert with nothing in sight. It's just wild. It's fascinating to me. And then the stars in the Southern Hemisphere are totally different, and you're camping out, looking up at knowing the world has a clue where you are. And I like that feeling.
Yeah.
So next trip for me is Susan and I are taking our boys. We're spending the month of February next year in remote Patagonia and Chile, returning to northern Bolivia to go back to the Uyuni salt flats. So we'll be gone for a month then.
Something really draws you to those expanses of sand, huh?
Yeah. It's, I like, I'm more drawn to desert landscapes than I am of alpine landscapes. But now to Patagonia, if you have been to Chile and Argentina, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, seems like it. I haven't been, but it's also something about like you're saying about your architecture of trying to like get as minimal of a material palette as possible, or color palette, but then thinking about texture. And it's like that's totally what I think of it about a desert, where you have this kind of sameness, at least in like an extreme desert, but then that really emphasizes the textures.
The way the light and the shadow play across the material, like as I was talking about this project in Chicago, near Chicago, it's going to be incredible. These clients are very enlightened. They're very studied in architecture. We beat out Rick Joy, Olson Kundig, Ates Massey, Marlon Blackwell was a friend of mine. Wow. They went to some really good firms, and they just really kind of subscribe to how we talk about work and our work itself. And I think, our process. So we feel really good about this one.
Yeah, that's cool. I just, it's encouraging to hear, of just that idea of just continue to do good work and have patience. And if you do those things and do it right, then good things come. Yeah.
And how old are you?
I am 30. What am I? 38.
All right. Well, yeah. I think I told you I finished school at 30, and then I started the Studio B at 34. And I would say that, by the time I was like 44, I felt pretty good. But I always tell young architects, I said, I think it takes 10 years out of school before you really know what you're doing. And, between codes, permits, HOAs, neighbors, budgets, schedules. I mean, it's such a complicated profession. And then you're dealing with the dreams of your clients and sometimes the limitations of, the HOAs and budgets. And that's why in many ways, if I could do it all over again, I'd probably still be an architect. But I would probably be a sculptor, where I don't have anyone tell me what you can and can't do. And if you don't like it, I don't care. But being a fine artist where you don't really have any handcuffs or restraints, to me would be a great way to live. But I must say that at this point in my career and the work we're doing here at Studio B, I've acquired a highly talented team, people I respect, and we're committed to this mission of design excellence in all we do. And it's really proven to work really well. And like I said, when clients come to us now, they usually say, we're not really talking to anyone else. We just want to work with you. And we usually, when we talk about our fees, they usually don't have a problem with it, because they know what they're going to get. And
Right.
Clients who come to us, are sophisticated and elevated, and they know it takes a lot of work to do this. Many of our clients have built before, so they know what to expect. That's one of the tricky things about you at your age. I mean, you're probably attracting clients who don't really, haven't done it before. They're talking to 5 other firms. Your fees are probably, reasonable at your age because, you don't have a lot of overhead and, you're trying to get a portfolio of work built, but it'll happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting because I'm interested by your experience where you started your firm, fairly early in your career. And my wife and I graduated in 2009. And my uncle gave us my vegetarian doctor uncle gave us a commission to design a hot dog restaurant in Kansas when we were 23. And so that's where we're in our studio apartment and not knowing anything, but designed and got this building built and then kind of did more projects with him. And so we started a firm so early. And then she went back to grad school. I went to grad school. We started working for firms. And then I started a firm twice again since then. But it's always, I have that sort of always that insecurity of I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't spend 10 years at a firm. I just jumped from firm to firm to firm. And, but it takes that confidence and that inner strength, I guess, to not kind of lean on 15 years of working for somebody else or something and just starting the firm. And now it's just start a firm,
Well, as you said early on, to start a firm, you either have to, have someone who really believes in you, which is typically a family member, or, a wealthy uncle or something like that, right out of school anyway. A lot of my friends at RISD were very wealthy kids. And, a lot of them got commissions from family people right off the bat. I mean, I wasn't one of those guys. I was one of the few that actually put myself through school, took out loans, et cetera. And, I think today RISD is $60,000 a year, and that's just for tuition. It's nuts. It's like Harvard.
Yeah.
And by the way, 2 years into my practice, I applied and got into the MARC2 program at the GSD, and Jorge, Silvetti was my sponsor. And then at the time, the woman I was dating got pregnant. So the timing didn't work. And, and I reapplied the next year, got in again. And then I started getting some great projects. So timing wise, it didn't work out, but it didn't make a difference because the trajectory of the firm has done well. And, having that additional master's degree probably wouldn't have made a difference, but I think the work speaks for itself these days. So,
Yo, Alexa, play the Plug podcast. My boy Rudolph enjoys an immersive audio experience. Do you feel me? Ho, ho, ho! With Echo Studio, we can listen to any podcast or song from Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. Click the link in this episode description.
Santa, check out my podcast.
Damn, even the Grinch has a podcast. Merry Christmas, ho! Ho, ho!